Hello, Susie. Thank you so much for joining us. Could you please introduce yourself and your company?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that. My name is Susie Jensen, and I'm the owner of Line Cider. We're tucked out in the middle of nowhere in Washington State, in Ellensburg, Washington, right in the heart of the apple growing region.
And can you give a little bit, like how long have you been in business? How did you get started?
I can expand on that a little bit.
That would be great.
I retired and was board stiff, to be honest with you. We have a farm about 300 acres, and there was about 7 acres that have not been used. And I've always been a cider drinker, and I've traveled around the world and have always enjoyed wonderful cider. And I regret the United States didn't have it, to be honest with you. And Prohibition kind of put a stop to that. But at any rate, I decided to plant my trees up in this 7 acres. It had great drainage. We have wonderful sun, and I knew the apples would do well. So I focused on old, bittersweet, bitter sharp apples. They're old heirloom apples. I have about 3,000 apples now. Mine are all trellised because of the winds. But the original idea was just to kind of stay local, to be something on the east side of Washington, and to have a craft cidery and make it a boutique type of thing. But COVID kind of changed all of my thoughts on that. All of a sudden we were closed, and I still had apples producing. And so it just so happened the timing was perfect. I received an award. I think it's the first time they ever came up with it. So I was the first recipient, and it's called the Washington State Rural Business of the Year Award. And it was so bizarre. I mean, we couldn't even hold an event to say ta-da, because of COVID. So, but shortly afterwards, you called me up, you had read about it, and you introduced yourself. And that's how I happened to learn about, would you be interested in export? And it's all I did. I didn't burst out laughing, but I'm just sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, that is the farthest thing in the world for me to think about. But COVID, it really opened up, with closing down doors, it opens up your mind to other opportunities. And so when doors close, windows open. And here I am, and I've just had the journey of a lifetime, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And I see this as a wonderful opportunity for me.
That is so great. It's, she expanded on my second question, which is really great. That's how we met. Now, the next question, I talked earlier about core functions of our international marketing program. What services and resources has WSDA provided for you in regards, like when you first started your export journey, how did we help you?
Oh, in every way possible. I know nothing about export. Let's be honest about it. So I think the first opportunity came with classes. There's webinars that you can take, and I've literally signed up for every webinar ever offered on export, and to try and, I guess, to literally learn the language, the vocabulary, the complexity of it, what's all involved, to get an overall view. So that has been wonderful. And then on top of the webinars, then you had programs that were outreach programs that I was able to participate in, virtual trade missions. Usually those were live, but because of COVID, they got changed, and that worked out wonderful. But I was able to meet with people in Taiwan, Japan, Korea, and then later on Canada and Mexico. But why these countries? You all had the marketing research to say that this was an area of growth, particularly for alcohol and spirits. And so I wouldn't know what country to start with. I'd pick Hong Kong or something like that. But you had done all of this research, and I was able to take advantage of that. And so these became my target markets. And so that's how I happened. From the very beginning, it was understanding the broader picture and understanding the market, helping to define it. And then you also put me in touch with a bunch of your affiliates. And so they also have helped form my marketing plan, my objectives, and everything else that has been involved. It's been a huge team effort, but it started with you.
Great, thank you. I also want to make a plug for our database. And so,
yes,
we got Susie into our database. That way she could start receiving information on exporting opportunities, webinars, trade leads. So,
and all of those have come into play. every one of those opportunities, when I get into the database, has helped me further. I mean, why would I pick one of my ciders? I picked it because it had cherries, and the information in your database said that Washington, or the Pacific Northwest, that Korea is the third largest importer of cherries. I wouldn't have known that. The trade leads, I had a wonderful opportunity, and I just, wrote back, I'm a small boutique eatery, if you have any questions, let me know. And I never heard from him, but later on, I wrote back to him again and said, I'm going to be over in a Food X, and if you were attending, please stop by the booth. I'll be in the American Pavilion. And sure enough, that has turned out to be a tremendous lead for me and very exciting potential. So all of this stuff may not happen right away, but it all starts building and developing, and it all supports each other.
That's so great. Hey, can you tell me some of the ways you have been able to meet with foreign buyers through our program?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's incredible, to be honest with you. You set up B2B meetings and business to business, and it's almost like speed dating. You sit at a table, and every half hour another guy comes and talks to you, and you learning from them what their needs are, how they go about marketing in their country, and you hear all about, from the specialists that come in and talk about it usually. And it's just been wonderful, the representatives, and they talk to you about how much is export, what's the value of their consumer and their target base and everything. And it's specialized just for alcohol. And it's, I'm not competing with anything else. We're all focused on alcohol. And so the statistics and all the information is very valuable to me. And then we turn around and the B2B meetings have been wonderful. And all you have to do is follow up. I mean, you have to say, thank you for coming, and what else can I get you? And I wanted to follow up with your questions here or there. It's just unbelievable. So those meetings, and it's not usually just one city. I've been to Montreal, I've been to Quebec, I've been to Mexico City, I've been to Monterey, and those, when they're live and real in person, they're much easier. It's a little harder to get that relationship built over the internet on Zoom meetings, but I have a wonderful lead in Korea that I've been talking to for 2 years now. And then when I was over in Japan at Food X, I was able to meet with him personally. And can I jump in with our partner, our market reps? Can I jump to that
sure
now? So
sure.
through this, I have met some great people, and it started in kind of a funny way. I guess you had them over the United States, and in Seattle, they were going to give some people an opportunity to visit with them one-on-one in Yakima and in Seattle. And I thought, well, I'm kind of on the way in between there. Why don't you have them come see a real cidery? And then I found out you didn't have plans for dinner. And I said, well, let's do a pairing. And so I got to meet personally, and they got to see me personally, the farm, the cidery, the tour. They got to taste it. They got to see it. They'll never forget it. It's an experience they won't forget. And I didn't forget them. And so here I am interacting with a young man from Korea. His name is Danny Kim. I don't speak Korean. He has been just wonderful. Anytime I need to talk to Mr. Lim or ATO, I talk to Danny, and he's the one that follows up with it and tells me the response. It's just been wonderful. So here I am going to Food X, and I had those trade leads, and I wrote to Danny. I said, I had 2 trade leads from Korea, and sure enough, he contacted them. And I had a gentleman come. I'm in the northern part of Korea in Seoul, and this young man is from the southern part of Korea, and he took a train all the way up to see me. We met in a meeting room that Danny coordinated. He had a translator. Danny was my translator, and sure enough, we 2.5 hours we're talking, and they love my cider. They already import cider from UK, and they liked mine better. How about that? That doesn't get That's a pretty neat story, I think. And Danny did it all. And he's the one that, and then he set up a meeting with Mr. Lim, the man that I've been talking to for 2.5 months. He set up a meeting with the embassy so I could talk to the people at ATO and find out more about this. And they in turn are supporting, they tell me all about the 2 people that I've been working with and what their background is. And, they're reliable. I mean, this is valuable information when I'm trying to set up a relationship with somebody. And that's just Danny's story. I can say almost the exact same thing with Keiko in Japan. She knew I was coming. I had met her at the cidery when we had a pairing, and she turned around. She knows the ambassador's resident manager personally. I mean, what a wonderful introduction that was. And then, I got to meet the ATO people through the embassy there, and she personally came by. She was in the booth next door to me, with your booth, I guess. And she came by and personally introduced people that she knew I should be meeting with. And that personal introduction is so much stronger than just somebody walking by. Do you want to have a taste of my cider? And she's following up. I mean, if ever I have a question or another lead, one of my leads was with Costco, and the 2 Americans, I'm sure I can talk to them, but the man in charge of the liquor department, he doesn't speak English. So Keiko will be my liaison and will represent literally Line Cider. So it's just been wonderful. And then the other thing, I cannot overlook, part of this whole thing is the language barrier. And every time you have provided a translator, and it's not just somebody dutifully reciting, they're young, energetic, outgoing. She was busy selling my cider. And in Mexico, I had this guy selling my cider. And in Canada, someone was translating from French. It's wonderful. I mean, you can't go wrong.
Thank you. Thanks to Susie, she's combined like 3 of my questions. She answered everything. So thank you. As Susie mentioned, we do bring our reps once a year. She's worked actually with several of them. We have five different ones. She has great stories. So that's why we wanted to have her on this interview. So it's really great. I guess the last thing, because you actually answered like my last 3 questions. So what tips would you like to share with other small business exporters?
Not to be afraid. Not to be afraid. And, it's a whole new vocabulary. It's almost, like learning the orchard. I knew nothing about apple trees. I knew nothing about marketing and cider and distributors and all of that. It's a whole new vocabulary. But with international export, it's even more so. And it's a little intimidating. And you think, oh, I could never do this. But then you learn from all of these people that you're not alone. Most of what, I can't remember what the numbers were. You can probably quote them faster than I could, but I think it's 89% small businesses or maybe it's 89% of our export is based on small businesses. And yeah, small business has a pretty broad definition. I truly am small. I'm a mom and pop, but they haven't been discouraging. They've encouraged me to get there and to broaden my base and to see a much larger picture of what I possibly could be. And I think that in itself is just incredible. But I think more importantly, how could you not want to become involved when you have a group of these professionals? They're willing to help you. They're not just strangers. They're now personal friends. I feel comfortable calling them and bouncing off ideas. I feel quite comfortable asking any question I have, and they lead me to another resource or they answer it themselves. I'm not alone anymore. I have this wonderful team. And they're free. I mean, how could you not want to do this? They're absolutely wonderful, wonderful people to work with. And I just cannot say enough about you.
Thank you, Susie, so much for this interview and for your time. And I hope, these encouraging words are going to get more people on board. I mean,
it's the best kept secret in Washington, let me tell you.
Yeah, we really are here to help and assist. And if you're not ready today, you might be ready in next year.
And you're willing to work with me along the way.
Absolutely. That's
what I am ready. So
absolutely. Thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.